What is going on, guys? Nutri's here, back with week 6 of my fantasy outlook. As always, we're going to do start 'em, sit 'em, waiver ads, who to drop, and buy low, sell high candidates. Starting next week, I'm going to be doing a thing where I'm going to be marking whether I hit on my starts and which ones I failed on too, so you guys can see how accurate I really am. I would do it this week, but I didn't jot it down, so for next week, I'm going to keep an eye out for it. So I'm sitting QBs. My start of the week is Matt Stafford versus Jacksonville. They're the 25th ranked D. Matt Stafford's ridiculously consistent. 22 points in his last start. I would feel good about putting him out there. I think he's like probably one of the best QBs to start that's not like owned in every league, or like, you know, he's not one of those Kyler, Russells, Mahomes that you're gonna start every week. So if you need somebody that you don't have one of those guys, Stafford's the way to go. I put Minshew versus Detroit. Minshew was my start of the week last week. He had 20 points, so I think he's been very good. He had one blunder, and that was a week that I put him as the start of the week. But this week, I think he's going to have a good time versus the weak Detroit defense. I have Fitzpatrick versus the Jets. He's a repeat offender on stardom. He's been really good, man. I would definitely roll him out. The Jets are really crappy, so feel good about putting him out there. I have Cam Newton versus Denver. He's coming off COVID, so people might not think about starting him. But if you have him and he's healthy and he's ready to go, gear him up because Denver is bad. Their defense is not what it once was with Von Miller out, so I would definitely rev him up. Ben versus Cleveland. Ben's been having a great time over there in Pittsburgh. They're 4-0. They're going to run it up on Cleveland. I know it's probably going to be a good game, but they're going to score a lot. I would definitely start him. And then Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan has had 3 bad fantasy weeks in a row, but I think this is the week he finally comes back. Atlanta is going to compete. Minnesota is like just as bad of a team defensively, so it's going to be a shootout. And then my sit of the week is Baker Mayfield versus Pittsburgh. Baker has a little hype back on him again because they've been winning a lot, and he's good, don't get me wrong. But against a great Pittsburgh D, I wouldn't touch him. And I think they're going to be a close game, but I don't think he's worth starting. I think he's going to get like 1 or 2 touchdowns passing. A lot of running the ball. I also have on my sit-ems Andy Dalton versus Arizona. He's a great pickup to make, and he's going to be good in the future. But this week against a good D, his first start out there, I would not start him. If you're desperate, if you lost Dak and you need him, you can throw him in there. But I gave you guys on top that are better if they're available. Jimmy Garoppolo, this was one of my big blunders of last week. Do not start him again. He got -1 points versus Miami, who's not even good. So do not start him versus an elite Rams team. Nick Foles, bad. That's all I have to say. Like, just don't touch him. Joe Burrow's a great quarterback, but they had a rough time versus Baltimore. They're going to have an even harder time versus the #1 ranked defense, Indianapolis. So do not touch Joe Burrow. I know a lot of you have him in your leagues, but do not rev him up this week. And then I have Teddy Bridgewater versus Chicago. They're the 2nd ranked defense. He had a great week last week. I hit on that start, but unfortunately this week versus a great D, I would not touch him. My running backs. For my start of the week, I have Myles Gaskin. Myles Gaskin was on my sit-em last week, and I think he proved me wrong. So versus the Jets, who was 28th ranked, I would start him. The Jets are just not having a good time, man. I would start almost anyone from the Dolphins because they've gotten to that point where they're just not good at all. And yeah, James Robinson versus Detroit, very bad D. Like I said, it's going to be a shootout. Robinson gets involved in the passing game, so even if the Jaguars fall behind, which they probably will, he's still good out of the passing game. I know he had a little bit of a shaky start last week, and he was my start of the week, so it was like not, I wouldn't say I picked horribly, but it wasn't a good pick because he only had 10 points. But this week you can feel confident about him. David Montgomery versus Carolina. David Montgomery is a great buy low candidate. He's going to keep blowing up against these really bad defenses. Carolina is a 32nd ranked D. They let Todd Gurley destroy them. They've let almost every running back destroy them, so I would definitely rev him up. David Johnson versus Tennessee. I have David Johnson as a sell high candidate, but I would also start him this week because Tennessee is not great against the run, and the Texans are getting better. So Antonio Gibson's been purely consistent. I think he has 10 plus in 4 weeks this week. So 4 weeks this year, so 4 straight weeks he has 10 plus points. Versus my crappy Giants team, just start him. 21st ranked. Devontae Freeman had a very explosive week last week. He had like 16 points. He's not a great start, but honestly, he's a good one this week. Versus Washington, we're going to probably get blown up, but I think he gets involved in the passing game enough to be worthy of a start. Adrian Peterson versus Jacksonville. Detroit's going to be ahead in this game. I think they're going to get at least one touchdown plowing it with Peterson. So feel good about him if you need somebody. And then Jones versus Green Bay. Green Bay's really bad against the run, and Jones is like kind of running out of time to do something here. He's been good lately, so I would rev him up. But once Fournette gets back, I'm not high on him. And then sit of the week, Joe Mixon. He's a repeat offender back-to-back weeks. Last week he had 14 points, so it wasn't like the worst start in the world, but it was definitely still a sit for me. You can get better production than him. Versus Indy, who's the third-ranked D, he's just not going to be good at all. And then I have Raheem Mostert versus the Rams, 16th ranked. Mostert's a great running back, but the 49ers might get really messed up. The way they got blown out against Miami, it could happen even worse. And then if so, they're just not going to be running the ball with Mostert. I have Kenyon Drake versus Dallas. Kenyon Drake, if you could sell him now, get rid of him. He stinks. He got lucky. He got bailed out by that one touchdown. That's how his fantasy week went. So I would definitely not start him, even though Dallas isn't great. Singletary, I had as a buy low candidate. I was wrong. Singletary is not great. Versus a great Kansas City defense, I would not touch him. Freaking TJ Yeldon got more points than him last week. And then I have Melvin Gordon / Philip Lindsay versus New England. At the time of recording this video, Melvin Gordon got a DUI. So I would say that Philip Lindsay is going to be the starter for at least a few weeks. But even so, I would not start him versus New England. They just have too good of a defense. And then I have any New England running back versus Denver. Denver's the number one ranked rushing defense. And New England's running back committee is a mess. So I just wouldn't start any of them. James White's like the only semi-viable one. And even him I would not touch this week. So I'm sitting wide receivers. My star of the week is my main man, Odell Beckham Jr. He's just been great. He's going to get better this week too. And then I have A.J. Brown versus Houston. I was surprised about him being so good last week, but he was 2 touchdowns. I would definitely start him in and try to buy him low if you can. Then I have DJ Chark versus Detroit. DJ Chark is going to be Minshew's number one guy, so I would start him. Although Laviska Shenault's not a bad start either. And then I have Jamison Crowder versus Miami. He's the only beneficiary of anything on the offense for the Jets, so I would take him. And then Marquise Brown versus Philly. I had him as a start last week, and he went off. He had like 19 points. I think he's going to do it again versus Philly. So I hit on that start. And one thing I didn't mention was Odell was my sit of the week last week, and it actually paid out. He only had 11 points. But this week, definitely start him. Even though Pittsburgh's a great D, their passing defense isn't great, and OBJ is Baker's number one guy. He's going to have to force him the ball at least a little bit. So sorry that I have to backtrack, but I forgot to say that. Will Fuller versus Tennessee. Will Fuller or Cooks can be decent here. I have Cooks in my sit just because I think Fuller's better. But Cooks is not an awful shout either. I just don't think he's worth starting this week. Fuller's the number one guy. And then I have Steelers wideouts. Deontay Johnson can even be a start, but he's a little banged up. But this Steelers wideouts thing is especially towards Claypool and Juju. Either one of them feel good starting versus the weak Cleveland D. They're the second worst in the NFL against receivers. So yeah, I would definitely do it. And then my sit of the week is DJ Moore. DJ Moore had a big week last week, but versus the second ranked D. I already have Bridgewater on my sit-em. DJ Moore's a sit of the week too. Robbie Anderson's the number one guy right now, so I would not touch DJ Moore this week. Then I have Tyler Boyd versus Indy. Like I said, they're going to get wrecked. AJ Green's dropping right now, and Tyler Boyd's just not going to have a good time over there. Amari Cooper, his target share went down last week big time. He had a really bad week for fantasy. Versus Arizona, who covers the receivers exceptionally well, I would sit him. And then I have Darius Slayton versus Washington. I just don't trust any Giants receiver, even though he was good last week. I don't. They're the third ranked D versus the wide receivers. Don't bother. I already covered Brandon Cooks, and John Brown versus Kansas City. Do not bother. He's questionable. He's just banged up, and that game is a big prove-it game for the Bills, but I think they're gonna get blown out. My start of the week tight end is T.J. Hawkinson, 24th ranked, Jacksonville. Like I said, they're going to be throwing a lot. It's going to be a shootout. I think he's his number 2 guy. I was surprised how much better he's been this year, but I would put him over Marvin like in their passing offense. So I think he's their number 2. I think he's going to have a big week this week. He's been on my start of the week before, and he scored a touchdown the week that I said he was. I have Evan Ingram versus Washington. Evan Ingram was on my stardom last week, and he wasn't great, but he did score. Versus Washington, who's a really bad defense, 28th ranked versus tight ends. I would definitely feel like he's going to score again. Jonnu versus Houston. I thought Jonnu was like not legit at all, but he scored 2 touchdowns yesterday versus the Bills. Versus Houston, that's kind of a crappy D. I would definitely start him again. Robert Tonyan is like start of the week material if Devontae's out, but he's probably not going to be, so Tonyan just a start for now, but he's been exploding. He has 10 plus in his last 3 weeks, including a 30-point performance in his last week. I would definitely get him if he's still available and start him. And then I have Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki fell off a little bit, but the Jets are bad. Like I said, you could start almost anybody against them. My sit of the week is Logan Thomas versus the Giants. The Giants are the 3rd ranked D versus tight ends. It's like the one position they cover well because they have Blake Martinez, they have Peppers. They have a decent D versus tight ends. I would not start him this week, even though his target share has been high, especially with Kyle Allen back there at quarterback. Jimmy Graham versus Carolina, the 8th ranked D. Jimmy's been exceptional, but versus that team, I would not do it. They cover the tight ends well. And then Austin Hooper versus Pitt. Like I said, OBJ is the only guy I have confidence in this week other than Kareem Hunt. So I would not start Austin Hooper. And then Gronk versus Green Bay. He's been getting targets taken from him from Brait. So I would not start him. Too risky versus a defense that's good against the tight ends. And then Noah Fant, he was on my start of the my sit-em last week, and he's just on it again because they had a bye week, so nothing changed after what I said last week. Defense and kickers. My start of the week defense is Colts versus Bengals. Like I said, the Bengals are going to have a bad time. I could definitely see the Colts getting a pick 6 or something, so I would start them. And then the Redskins versus the Giants. The Giants just can't really put that many points up on the board. They did it versus Dallas, but that was a lot due to like their defense, so I don't think they're going to do good on offense at all. Dolphins versus Jets. Dolphins are just going to have a great time versus the Jets. It's going to be a party. It's going to be like a 30-3 game. They're arguably the start of the week. I think they're my like 2nd or 3rd. I put them 3rd here. Yeah, so definitely pick them up if you need them. Steelers is supposed to be versus Browns. It's not a great start, but it's a decent one. It's better than the other defenses out there. But I think they can definitely get a pick 6 off Mayfield or something. That's all you're really looking for with your defense. Panthers versus Bears. The Bears are shaky with Foles, like really shaky, so maybe something could happen there. That's why I have them here. And the Packers versus Bucks. I think the Packers are going to beat up on the Bucks bad. So even though their defense isn't great, if you really need somebody, if those top 5 are taken, go with the Packers this week. Then I have kickers. I have Jason Sanders. He had 20 points last week. And then the other names up there are just very consistent kickers in very good matchups. So Jason Sanders is the only guy that I think is worth picking up. But if you need another kicker, if your kicker's on a bye, pick up one of the other 4. Waiver wire adds and drops. So my highlight of the week for waiver wire adds and drops is Alexander Mattison. Alexander Mattison is 51.6% owned. So it's a lot, but if he's, I don't know how he's not owned in 48% of the leagues, but he can be a week winner this week. So I would definitely start him and get him if you can. LaMichael Perrine, he's not great, but he's like got to prove himself for the Jets. So since they released Bell, he's going to be the number 1 guy. I think he's worth like a little bit of a risk. Andy Dalton's going to be a hell of a quarterback for fantasy. Anybody can do it in that Dallas offense. Maybe not like Dak, but he's going to be viable. Travis Fulgham, huge week last week. 30 points. Definitely get him. Him and Greg Ward are looking both pretty good. And then Tim Patrick is on here from last week. The Broncos didn't play this week, so I would say add him again, even though his percentage went up. Chase Claypool, 13.5%. He's going to be one of the top ads this week. 4 touchdowns last week, 42 fantasy points. I would definitely try to get him and start him this week. Jordan Akins is like a decent shout at tight end since Houston's been playing better. So that's why I put him here. He's only 4.5% owned. Preston Williams, 38.1% owned. He's Fitzpatrick's number 2 after Parker. But versus the Jets, they're going to light it up. I think he's definitely going to get some passes. So if you can pick him up, do it. Cameron Brate, 2.9% owned. Since OJ's went down, he's been getting a good amount of targets. So if you need a tight end bad, Akins and Brate are not horrible shouts. And then drop them Traquan Smith, AJ Green, Scotty Miller, and Mark Ingram. All of which are just bad. Scotty Miller's time is done. Godwin's back. AJ Green is looking for a trade. He's probably not going to get traded, so that's why I'd say drop him. Michael Thomas is going to be back after the bye, so Traquan Smith is done. And then Mark Ingram is like, J.K. Dobbins is the only person worth owning out of that backfield. Sell high. My number one sell high is Drake. If you can somehow get anything for him since he scored a touchdown, do it. That touchdown doesn't change anything. He's still awful. So if you can trade him, do it. I just did. Mike Davis only has a week or two left. He can still win you these weeks, like if you need it bad. But if you're like 3-1 or 4-1, I'm sorry, or 5-0 or something, and you could afford to trade him, do it. You can maybe get somebody better for the long term. Mixon I have on here every week, just not worth what he is. He might be able to fetch you like a better guy. Like maybe you could package him and something else for McCaffrey. Who knows? Try to trade him. Mostert's great, but that team is just looking really dreadful, so that's why I have him here. And he hasn't been bad, so he still has fantasy value. Terry McLaurin's a big-time sell. He was really good earlier in the year with Haskins, but he lost his Ohio State partner to the bench. So I would definitely not want to start him or use him anymore. Try to sell him because Kyle Allen is the quarterback now. Ryan Tannehill is not a 30-point-a-week guy, so if you can get something better out of him, then do it. He's a decent quarterback, but he's not as good as he was last week. So if somebody buys high on him, then do it. David Johnson, I have him as a start this week, but I also have him as a sell high. He's just not that great. He definitely does not look the same. So if you can get something decent out of him, do it. And then Ronald Jones, his time's just short before Fournette kicks up again. Michael Thomas, McCaffrey, Adams are going to be on buy low every week until they're healthy. If you can shoot at a low record team for them, like 1-4 or something, and they own Michael Thomas, they're going to want to trade him. Go do it. And then Brandon Cooks has value. He's like really cheap right now, so I would do that. And then Le'Veon Bell's a free agent. If anybody wants to trade him, do it, because if he signs with a real team, he's going to be worth something. And then I have Debo and Edelman, both of which are coming off bad weeks. I would definitely buy them. They're both very talented receivers. So yeah, that's it for this week's video. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys need. If you want to make a move or something, if you're not sure of what to do, please let me know. I'm down to help always. And please give this video a like. Try to share it with people. I'm trying to make it out there. Like I said, next week I'm going to show you how often I really hit on these. And I'm going to show you my team next week too. So just stay tuned with the series. It's going to be a lot of fun. I appreciate every single one of you for watching the video. Thank you, as always. Nutrius signing out. Good luck in your fantasy this week.